Secretary Kerry, and many foreign ministers, both from EU countries and many foreign ministers from very far away EU countries, and obviously a very strong leadership and presence of our Afghan friends. I would like to personally EU countries and many. That's not a formal thank you. President Ghani, Chief Executive Abdullah, all the team of the National Unity Government, the ministers that co-hosted with us and co-organized with us and co-prepared with us this conference. So if this conference has been today a success, today and yesterday a success, is thanks to an excellent teamwork that in itself has proven to be a very positive result of this conference, and that will continue from tomorrow onwards. Let me say immediately that the conference expressed impressive international commitment to support Afghanistan. Some were skeptical, some were saying we're going to face a donor's fatigue, an Afghanistan fatigue. After 15 years, the international community is tired. I have to tell you, in the last 2 years, after the London conference, many were even saying, why are you organizing this conference in Brussels? It's going to be difficult to mobilize the international community again. And here we are today, being able to announce that the international community, all the countries and organizations present here today, committed, pledged for the period 2017-2020, a total amount of $15.2 billion US, which is an amount of money that is exceeding our most rosy pictures of even yesterday. That I say this for the Brussels-based colleagues, that means 13.6 billion euros. Out of this amount of money, I'm proud to announce that the European Union, together with its member states, is the first donor of all, with 5 billion euros, which makes 5.6 billion US dollars. So we have reasons to, well, you have reasons to go back home with good news to tell. We have reasons to share with all our friends in the world and in Afghanistan and in the region the good news that is that the international community is firmly and in a very consistent way, in a very determined way, at the side of Afghan people, starting from Afghan women, Afghan youth, because we know very well that investing in Afghanistan, in the Afghan people, and in the strength and the wisdom of the Afghan people is a way of investing in international stability and in our own present and future. So support continues at extraordinary levels. I have talked about a new international and regional deal on Afghanistan. We also count on a new internal deal in Afghanistan, and here I would like to recognize the leadership of President Ghani, Chief Executive Abdullah, and the entire National Unity Government that I have no doubt will manage to build on this extraordinary support of the international community to give Afghanistan the institutional stability and strength based on democracy and on the constitution of the country that the country deserves. Many around the table today mentioned this very clearly. The international community sees no alternatives to a strong, united, determined, cohesive and inclusive national unity government that manages to bring forward the reforms that it has envisaged for the country, and that with this international support it can really realize. I might mention many different issues we discussed today. I will leave it either for the questions or for the for sure wise words that President Ghani will mention. I will just mention one point, that among the key elements that will be there for our common work from tomorrow onwards in Kabul, in Brussels, everywhere in the world, we know very well that security is a key factor. We know also that security is not only a matter of security forces, it is also a matter of security forces, and we as European Union are and will continue to be at the side of the Afghan security forces, especially with our training mission. But it's also a matter of politics. security also depends on strong democratic institutions, inclusive processes, and meaningful peace processes. Security only exists in Afghanistan if it is for all other countries in the region, and security exists in Afghanistan only if all other countries in the region create the conditions for it. So let me share with you something I hinted at this morning. In these days, yesterday evening, having organized a meeting together with President Ghani, with Chief Executive Abdullah, with the Foreign Minister Rabbani, with some key players of the international arena, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, Secretary Kerry, and some key regional actors such as India, Pakistan or China. And today, during our work, I have seen clearly that there is space for a common basis for regional political support to the political peace and reconciliation process in Afghanistan. Regional support for an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace process that would be inclusive, based on democracy and in respect of Afghan constitution, as well as a common understanding that negotiations with the Taliban will be needed on the basis of these principles. The European Union, together with our Afghan friends, will build on this new window of hope, I could say, also on the political side, on this emerging regional consensus that we clearly saw last night in this meeting I organized and today during the day. So let me say it has been an extremely successful financial support exercise, an extremely successful pledging conference, but it has also been a very successful political conference, I believe, to inject new energy in what we need for the future of Afghanistan, that is support to the work you're doing, Mr. President, together with all your team, together with Chief Executive Abdullah, and again, making sure that this stays a priority not only for you, not only for the region, with the consistency that we expect from the region, but also for the entire international community. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. President Ghani, you have the floor.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful, let me congratulate you as the driving spirit of this. Let me thank all our EU colleagues. Let me extend the gratitude of all Afghans to all the 75 countries and 25 organizations that participated. It is truly a remarkable day because 2 years ago, people, if you placed a wager, they would have said that getting $5 billion in commitment for Afghanistan's reconstruction in its 15th year would have been an impossibility. Why have we succeeded? I like to recognize teamwork among my colleagues and teamwork with you. What has been different about this conference is not promises, but a record of delivery. We have been good at words in the past. We've prepared for conferences in the past, but then we've forgotten. What we are doing differently is a process of very careful examination. Every day for the past 3 months, with Minister Hakimi's gentle but very firm prodding, we've met at least for 2 to 4 hours to prepare. It has been a 3-step process, a brutally honest recognition of our shortcomings in the diagnosis of the problem. 2, adoption of policies that would be guiding. And 3, coherent focus on implementation. So all the plans that have been prepared have been carefully prepared and are based on their relevance to the lives of the people. Let me also thank the civil society of Afghanistan, the journalists of Afghanistan, the media, and the private sector. Our dialogue with women, with youth, with civil society and the media has been enormously constructive. And the first thing that upon my return I'll be doing would be a group for security of the media and security of civil society. It's essential that this dialogue continues and the dialogue yield result. The state is necessary. Its efforts are not sufficient. We need a vibrant civil society. We need a functioning market. And what is next to the 15 billion is 15.2 billion that has been pledged today. We need to understand that in the last 3 months, the Afghan private sector is pledged $1.1 billion of investment, almost 800 million of which is in the energy sector. When the Afghan private sector can have a horizon of 20 years and also part of the international private sector, that is when change happens. Let me explain. Today, the international community has made a pledge. This is a promise. Redeeming of this promise does not depend on the international community. It depends on the Afghan nation. A pledge gets to be translated to a commitment, it then gets to be translated to a budget, and finally it gets to be translated into disbursement, and then it gets to be translated to programs and projects. So the work from the Afghan side in earnest begins tomorrow. Our credit line has been extended, but there's no cash at the other end. We need to understand this. And why? I'm making this point because momentum, credible delivery, integrity, efficiency, and particularly transparency is the key driver. We have taken our L's, and among those 3 are really the vicious circle, and they're chain-linked. Criminality, corruption, and conflict. If we do not muster the political will in the practical ways of dealing with corruption, these pledges will remain pledges. If we do not address the sense of criminality, particularly the shadow that the criminal narcotics economy casts over us, our progress would be marked. And conflict is not just war. There ranges abuse of authority, irresponsible armed groups, and others are the factors that we need to recognize. But on the other side, there's a virtuous circle of equally chain-linked, which is prosperity, peace, and policies, politics. Politics has to become productive. Politics is not about gaining office. It is about service. And we need to recognize that our Constitution enshrines democratic practice and accountability. So key to the future is our capability to make the Constitution a reality. Chapter 2 of the Constitution gives Afghan citizens rights and obligations, and it enshrines the equality of all Afghan citizens in front of the law. This is crucial, but also we need a sense of productive regional politics. And what is rewarding, Ms. Mugrani, and again thank you for convening yesterday's meeting, is that we have to come from a zero-sum game in the relationship between states to a win-win approach, because the threats that we face, and I'd like to make a linkage again and thank you and all the other member states of the European Union who are simultaneously members of NATO or contributors to the Resolute Support Mission, that we have had two statements, major statements of support for Afghanistan within a short period. In Warsaw, pledges for security of Afghanistan were made, and our brave forces are counting on that. Today, it's the promise to the people, to the poor, to the youth, to the women, to the excluded, that they will have a lease on life and would be citizens of a state which they will enjoy living in, and prosperity can be generated through our own efforts. Once again, I'd like to thank you personally for enormous attention, for your friendship, for your care, and for the kind words of appreciation. Your staff for remarkable teamwork with ours. This is the way international partnerships are to work. A shared vision derived from shared values, translated into action plans, measured concretely, and on that basis, support reinforced. Once again, I'd like to thank you and all the 100 leaders of delegations for their trust in Afghanistan. Afghanistan indeed is work in progress, but it is work that is going to reach the right conclusion. A stable, prosperous, democratic Afghanistan is in the world's interest, it's in the interest of the Afghans, and it would be a beacon of hope for the Islamic world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have time for a few questions. We will start with Afghanistan journalists. I see Tolo News over there in the second row.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm Parvez Shamal from Tolo News. I have a question both of you can answer. The pledges that were committed to Afghanistan, was it based on NUG performance or the international community's concerns and fears to lose the achievement of the 15 years, the past 15 years?
I can try to interpret the thinking behind this amazing, impressive support. That are also the basis for the European Union own pledge that, as I said, is the first, is the most significant. I believe that this is the understanding, finally, that the international community cannot only tackle the crisis at their peak, but have to sustain efforts, being it for conflict prevention, not the case for Afghanistan, being it for stabilization, reconstruction, giving hope to societies, building the conditions for, as you said, the poorest, but not only the poorest, the youth, which is the large majority of the population, the women. If you combine all these sectors, you get probably the 100% of the Afghan society. This means, I think the international community, and Europe for sure, has realized that it is in our interest to invest in the success of Afghanistan now and in the future. It is exactly the win-win approach that President Ghani was mentioning. We have, I think, finally realized that instead of running here and there, wherever conflicts blow up, we have to have a steady, consistent, serious policy of investment in human safety, which involves job creations, human rights, strong governance, inclusiveness, also hard security, but most of all development, social and economic development. And that I am not strong if my neighbor is not strong. Sometimes in the past decades, someone in the international community have thought that I'm strong if someone else is weaker. I think we have finally realized that either we're strong together or we are all losing together. And this is why I think Afghanistan is receiving today, as you said, a credit that needs now our common work to be translated into projects that change the life of the Afghan people. This is the aim. But I think this is because of that, not out of fear, but out of rational investment in our common security, but also our common development. It's an investment in something that everybody believes can have an happy end.
Well, just to re-echo, partners need to trust each other. And trust comes from recognition of our problems. Today, I hope you've seen, we have not been lectured on corruption because we are tackling. We are not lectured on addressing our women's rights because we are addressing them. We are not being asked to focus on our poor because we are dedicated to uplifting of our poor. Advocacy comes from a rational argument, not from an emotional one. Appeal to emotion, appeal to failure is not a way to get commitments. There are too many other places. Somalia, Syria, Libya, you name it.
Don't suggest them questions.
So it's important to understand that it's not just the responsibility of the donors. It is our responsibility to carve a future and to deliver. And that means also proposing an end to aid, not perpetual dependence on aid. So the path of self-reliance is extraordinarily important, and the work that we have done in partnership and what we have achieved together has been convincing, and I hope that that becomes ground for translation of this pledge to the reality of programs and projects that would change our lives.
Ana.
Thank you. Ana Pisonero from the Spanish news agency Europa Press. Today we've heard German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier condition at least the German aid of 1.7 billion euro for the next years to cooperation on the migration front from Afghanistan. I would like to ask President Ghani how he feels about this, about conditioning aid to taking back Afghan nationals that are supposedly staying irregularly in the European Union. And I would like to ask Madam Mogherini, because you did mention very clearly on the way in that the EU aid was not conditioned upon this. So of the 5 billion that you've mentioned are from the EU side, is it only the Germans that is conditioned also to the cooperation in migration? And also a very quick last question, it's also with the refugees, but the civil society members today have actually asked to stop the deportations of Afghan refugees until the country is stable. So is this feasible after the agreement that was signed on Sunday? Thank you.
Should I start? Yes, let me clarify immediately, and thank you for the question. The agreement we just signed, which has nothing to do with the conference of today, which was not the issue of the conference of today, and that not by chance was not signed here at the conference today, is the result of a parallel process that we started months ago through a very open, constructive, transparent dialogue and cooperation, exactly as we have prepared together in a spirit of partnership this conference, to manage better a phenomenon that is complex on both sides. It's complex in Afghanistan because the criminal organizations that are arranging the travels of Afghans in a regular way is a problem also for the Afghan security and economy, and it's complicated to manage on the European side. So it's a sense of partnership that provides us a space for working together, for managing together. That is the spirit, and this is the meaning of the agreement. The agreement itself provides for sure no conditionality, and all the pledges today were not binded to conditionalities, for sure not the one of the European Union proper. And let me stress one thing that maybe is still unclear, but I think it's correct for me to underline this. I know there is a lot of attention in the European public opinion and also in Afghanistan on different sides on the part of the agreement that concerns returns and reintegration. This has not at all to do with refugees. This would be against international law and European law. So it's only referring to Afghans that are present on the European Union territory without a legal basis for that, which means without an asylum procedure or without having asked for asylum or having been rejected asylum. So the key principles, not only of international law, that we not only respect but promote, and Afghanistan knows something about that, are not only fully respected but at the basis of any dialogue and any partnership we discuss. And I would also like to stress that this is only one tiny part of an agreement that covers opportunities for the young people of Afghanistan. And let me stress that this is, to my eyes, the most important part also of that agreement, and maybe the part that overlaps a bit with the conference of today. If you want to find a point of connection, it's actually that, the need to invest in the future and the present of the Afghan youth so that they find secure conditions but also satisfactory conditions in their own country in the first place. This is our purpose.
We are absorbing 6,000 people a day from Pakistan and 1,500 people a day from Iran. Afghan refugees in those two countries have decided to return. And it is going to be one of our key challenges and one of our key tasks, probably among the top 5 tasks, to be able to reintegrate. We have 4 to 5 million refugees outside our country, and our body politic is incomplete without them. And it's essential for stability that we focus on that, and we are extraordinarily grateful to the European Union for the support on the overall rebuilding of the country to get particularly the agriculture sector and related sets of programs underway that we can implement. There's no conditionality-based approach. And when partners have a problem, they discuss them and arrive at a way forward, which is exactly the title of the agreement.
Not by chance.
Kurshi TV? No, sorry.
No.
Second row. No, excuse me. Yes, Kurshi TV.
Yes, but others also want to talk.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me.
No. Maya.
Can you excuse me?
Excuse me.
Please, excuse me. Please leave the gentleman.
Can I ask the security to excuse me, Maya? Can we do something about
Yes.
that, please?
Can you please?
We don't do like that.
Please bring the journalists back to the room. Colleague, can you please go ahead?
Thank you so much.
Yes, we can proceed with the others in the meantime. Thanks.
Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Madam Magrini. As Afghan government have committed for tackling corruption, but we Afghans want to hear about mutual tackling corruption. For example, in the past we have some of international companies that they work in Afghanistan and they just committed to corruption in Afghanistan. So is there any deal that the international community will just offer and also to tackle those communities and companies that they were involved in corruption? And Mr. President, the $15.2 billion that we have got from the international community, I want to ask that in which particular parts it will be invested, and do you think that it will help Afghanistan in coming 4 years for having a self-reliance in 4 years, and in which parts it will be invested? Thank you.
I have an easy answer to that. Corruption is corruption. It has no border of nationality. And those that are involved in corruption episodes need to have exactly the same treatment, whatever nationality they're from, being it in Afghanistan, being it in Europe, being it elsewhere in the world. So when we ask for, or actually rather than what we ask for, but when we cooperate on anti-corruption measures, we do it being it corruption that is done by or with Afghan citizens involved, or being it with European citizens involved. We don't make any difference on that, and all the cooperation we can have on anti-corruption obviously is there.
The key is to begin with the Citizen Charter, a $1 billion investment program that for the first time will cover all the villages and all the urban communities in Afghanistan. The second program is one of energy. Afghanistan today is 9 separate islands of power. Our vision is to create one central grid that serves as the center of energy trade in the region. Energy trade is going to be an extremely important source of revenue for the future, but energy is really the infrastructure of infrastructure. Today, without reliable energy, you cannot move to create the integrated agriculture or processing or industry or others. The third national program is urban. The urban sector is coming under very dynamic leadership. Minister Nadiri and others, we've prepared a full national program on this. 23 young dedicated mayors have been appointed across the country, which is an enormous network, and moving the urban sector in relationship to the women's empowerment, which we launched in January, is the other critical program. And then our most fundamental issue, harnessing our water. We have about 26 billion cubic meters of water that today is not harnessed. This is critical to the future prosperity of the country, and ensuring that our water resources are harnessed will bring both stability and prosperity. We envisage at least 400,000 hectares of new land to be brought. You've seen we've completed 2 dams, one after another, and more dams will be launched in the next 3 years than the last 250 years combined. Railway and roads as corridors with fiber optics, because if you look at Afghanistan today, we are disconnected. Central Afghanistan still remains isolated. Badakhshan, Nuristan does not have a single road connecting its district. We want to make sure every district center is connected to the capital center and around. But last but most significantly is the human capital. It's how we change education from bottom up, from the first grade to the universities, and so that we can train. Also, civil service reform would be funded through this, through a very transparent programs. The full details and the peace and development new framework, so it's been worked out. Now, the key to this, again, is interministerial collaboration and a focus Afghanistan-wide. In terms of opportunities, about 70 to 80% will be based on economic criteria, 20 to 30% on criteria of social inclusion. So remote districts, districts with poverty, districts with isolation will receive special attention, and I hope that this will provide a sustainable basis for an Afghanistan that can move towards self-reliance.
Thank you very much. I see a lot of questions. I will exceptionally take Julian and then the gentleman who was led out of the room, but I would kindly ask you to respect the rules of the press room, which is open to all registered press. Julian, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I did want to ask a Syria question. High Madam Mogherini, last week you talked about the EU needing to respond to the crisis in Aleppo. Is it now time to decide on additional measures, and could that include sanctions against Russia or Syrian officials? And is there a sense that Aleppo is about to fall from your conversations with colleagues today?
And now the gentleman over there.
Yes, thank you. Mr. President, with all, I come from Afghanistan, and as a journalist who lives and works here, I see a huge difference between you are seeing and the realities in Afghanistan. You here talking of justice, while the worst kind of systematic discrimination is applied against Hazara people in your administration. You talk of democracy, while the largest peaceful civilian protests, including millions of citizens in Kabul, were suppressed by bombs and bullets. Mr. President, you here in the presence of the world, leaders talk of fighting corruption, while the most of accused official in corruption in your administration does not arrested or tried, and the bloody attack on peaceful civilian protests on 12th August at Demazang Square in Kabul city is very skeptical. But you evading the responsibility to investigate the tragedy. And also, Mr. President,
can you please wrap up the question, please?
Yes. I ask you, Mr. President, Mr. Gulbuddin Hekmatyar is one is the most brutal and bloodthirsty terrorist, but you want to bring him in the government just for strengthening your ethnic support. With all this, I ask you, without justice and without respect to civilian protests and civilian rights, how you support democracy and you support you support democracy?
Excellent question. Thank you. Unlike you, I believe in democracy, not in accusations. So let me first put the case. Not a single person has been arrested for a protest. 2, the people who blew up the protesters were Daesh, and Daesh took responsibility for it. There's a full commission for investigation. The people who directed were warned by the chief of the Kabul police, the Kabul garrison, the Director General of National Directorate of Security of the threats. American University was attacked. Was that ethnic? The police were blown up. Was that ethnic? You need to have criteria of judgment. For a journalist, you seem to have made up your mind instead of looking at facts. It is important to understand. The second vice president of Afghanistan is Hazara. The head of the Human Rights Commission of Afghanistan is Hazara. The largest amount of infrastructure investment in Afghanistan, over $8 billion, over close to $1 billion, $800 million in roads, is devoted to central Afghanistan. The protests started over a transmission line that had been decided by the past administration, over a 500 kV line. We have allocated 300 megawatts of power to Bamyan. Kabul today gets that for the needs of Bamyan previously were allocated 1 megawatt from solar. We have allocated 300 megawatts. This is an indication of our even-handed commitment. You've had a right of protest. You've called every Afghan names. You've insulted, but the tolerance of the government is exceptional. We remain committed because you have a right to due process and to freedom of press. Our press is ranked among the top freest in the country. is there a single television station here, and there are people from the press that is censored, that we've ever approached? Instead, when journalists have been threatened, isn't it first and foremost that you're called to the national security? So as a young person, I invite you to investigate, to compare, and when you make accusations, be proven. Are you willing to put these accusations in a court of law? Bring them in front of the Justice Center. If the Justice Center judges your accusations right, I'll punish any person and I'll take responsibility. But are you willing to take an open trial and make your accusations, and then, if you're judged to be maligning, to be bringing false charges, that you are imprisoned and go and pay for false accusations in maligning your country? That's my invitation to you, as an open democratic president, an elected president that believes in freedom and rule of law.
Very shortly on Syria, because really, for once that we dedicate the entire 2 days to a country that deserves all our attention, I don't feel particularly comfortable in answering a question that relates to something else. But I understand very well the attention to Syria, also because obviously part of our talks at the margins of the conference today, especially with Secretary Kerry and with Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, were related to the situation in Syria, in particular to two issues. And these are the two issues to which the European Union and me personally are dedicating the attention and the work of these hours. Are one, the humanitarian situation in Aleppo, where, as you know, we are trying hard through the international agencies, the UN system and the NGOs to find a way of providing medical help inside eastern Aleppo and to have medical evacuation of those that are in need in a very extremely difficult circumstances. And the second element of our work in these days is as we all said, and we still all believe, that only a political solution to the situation in Syria can put an end to this war, and not a military victory of one side on the other, that we managed to relaunch, I would say preserve and relaunch the space for political processes to be carried on. This is something we're doing together with the United Nations. The UN Special Envoy is the one that is responsible for this process to be continued, but the European Union has and can have a role to play to actively support its efforts in these hours to keep the window of the political solution open so that the Syrian parties can engage in a discussion on the future of their country that sooner or later will have to come. And we believe, again, I would like to stress this very clearly, that there is no military solution to this conflict. This is still very strongly our belief, that I believe also the other international and regional actors continue to share. So our work in these hours is not on other elements, is on trying to safeguard and relaunch the perspectives of a political solution. Thank you. And apologies for derailing from the main issues.
Absolutely.
With this, I conclude the press conference. I thank you very much. I also invite you to look at the joint communique that was agreed today. Thanks.
Don't necessarily associate that with Afghanistan in the recent years. So indeed we've had an excellent day.